The grand Steinway piano gleamed under the golden chandelier in the Billionaire's living room, untouched for years, more decoration than instrument. It stood there like a museum piece, waiting for fingers worthy enough to stir its silence. 12-year-old Amara stood a few feet away from it, her fingers nervously picking at the hem of her faded skirt. Her mother, Miss Laverne, stood silently in the corner, clutching her cleaning rag, lips pressed tight. They both knew this wasn't a game. "So," Mr. Whitmore said, sipping his bourbon, voice dripping with amusement, "your daughter says she can play? That right, Laverne?" Miss Laverne didn't speak. She only nodded once. Amara's eyes scanned the room. White marble floors, towering bookshelves, oil paintings of dead men in gold frames. She'd never been this close to the piano. She'd only stared at it from the hallway while mopping floors. "Go ahead, then," Mr. Whitmore said, waving his hand like a king commanding a jester. "Play something. For fun." Amara walked to the piano like it might bite her. Her hands trembled as she sat down. No sheet music. No practice. Just a heart full of sound she'd kept hidden. She touched one key, soft, delicate, then another, then a third, and suddenly her fear melted into melody. The room filled with music so rich, so soul deep, it felt like time paused to listen. Mr. Whitmore's smirk faded. The bourbon glass in his hand lowered. His guest turned silent, stunned. Amara played with closed eyes. She wasn't reading notes. She wasn't copying a song. She was speaking through sound, pouring out years of silence, of being unseen. When she finally stopped, the room didn't breathe, and then, "Where the hell did you learn that?" Mr. Whitmore asked, his voice no longer amused. Amara turned toward him, her voice quiet but steady. "I listen while Mama works." And just like that, everything in the room shifted. Mr. Whitmore leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes locked on the child like she was a puzzle that didn't make sense. "You're telling me you picked that up by ear? No lessons?" "Nothing." Amara nodded. "She's never had a piano lesson in her life." Miss Laverne finally spoke, her voice calm but proud. "Not that we could afford one." One of the guests, a woman in pearls with a permanently raised eyebrow, laughed nervously. "Well, that's something. Must be a fluke. Beginner's luck, perhaps." Amara looked down at her hands, now resting quietly on her lap. She knew what they were thinking, that it was some kind of trick, some lucky guess. But it wasn't. "Play something else," Mr. Whitmore said, almost too quickly. "Anything." She hesitated. Then her fingers moved again, this time bolder, faster, as if the piano itself had waited years for her return. The music shifted from soft sorrow to fiery emotion, from pain to power. A jazz rhythm poured out, alive with soul and heartbeat. It wasn't just music. It was history. Her history. In the corner, Laverne wiped a tear with the back of her hand. The guests were no longer sipping drinks. They were staring, jaws slightly open, unsure how to process what they were witnessing. When Amara finished, silence wrapped the room again like a thick fog. Mr. Whitmore stood slowly, walked to the piano, and stared at her like she had come from another world. "Do you know what perfect pitch is?" "No," she whispered. "It means you hear every note exactly, like your brain is a tuning fork. You have it." He turned toward the others. "This girl's a prodigy." The word hung in the air like thunder. Prodigy. But Amara didn't smile. She just looked at her mom, silently asking if this was good or bad. Miss Laverne gave her a small nod, but her eyes stayed cautious. She'd worked in this house long enough to know, when rich people get curious, it's never simple. And something about the way Mr. Whitmore looked at her daughter made her uneasy. The next morning, Mr. Whitmore sent for them. Not in the usual way. No shouting from the top of the stairs. No bells rung for cleaning, but a formal request. A butler knocked on the servant's entrance with a typed note. "Bring the girl to the parlor at 9 a.m." Amara clutched her mother's hand as they walked through the vast halls. The house, though familiar, felt different now, like it was watching her, judging her, testing what came next. Mr. Whitmore sat in a leather chair, legs crossed, a tablet in his hand. He didn't greet them. "There's a music conservatory in New York," he said. "One of the best in the country. I made a few calls." Miss Laverne's brows pulled together. "Sir, she's getting in," he continued. "They'll audition her. If she plays like she did last night, they'll take her. Full scholarship." Amara's heart leapt, but her mother's grip on her hand tightened. "You talked to someone already?" Laverne asked, voice edged with suspicion. "I did. They trust my word." He looked at Amara, "But there's a condition." The warmth in the room vanished. Mr. Whitmore stood, walking slowly to the grand piano. "Talent needs polishing. She'll need daily practice, structured training, hours a day, which means she'll stay here, in my home, with tutors, starting today." Laverne stepped forward. "Sir, with respect, she's a child. My child. If she learns with me nearby." Mr. Whitmore turned, eyes cold. "Laverne, this isn't some charity case. Your daughter has a gift that could take her out of this life completely. You'd be selfish to hold her back." Amara looked between them, heart pounding. "She's not a bird in a cage," Laverne said sharply. "She doesn't need to be owned to be free." Mr. Whitmore's jaw clenched. "You're making this harder than it has to be." Laverne stepped in front of her daughter. "And you're forgetting she's not yours to control." But even as the words left her mouth, she knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let Amara go so easily. The tension in the room could be sliced with a knife. Mr. Whitmore's nostrils flared, but he forced a smile. "You're overreacting, Laverne. I'm offering your daughter a future, one most kids in her situation could only dream of." Laverne didn't flinch. "You mean a future that keeps her under your roof, under your rules, under your name." He took a slow step toward her. "You think cleaning my floors is a better future?" Amara clung to her mother's skirt, confused and scared. She didn't understand why something that felt so good, playing the piano, was now tearing everything apart. "I'll teach her myself," Laverne said. "We'll figure out. She can play at church, maybe even local recitals." "That's not enough," he snapped, voice rising. "She's beyond all that. She's meant for stages, symphonies, the world." "But at what cost?" Laverne asked quietly. Mr. Whitmore turned away, exhaling sharply. "You don't get it. People like me, we see talent as investment. And what I saw last night, that was gold." The word stung. Investment. Like Amara was a stock. A business move. "I'll pay for everything," he added. "The school, the trainers, the travel. I'll even pay you to stay here, too, if that's what it takes." Laverne's eyes narrowed. "You think money solves everything." Mr. Whitmore shrugged. "In my world, it usually does." That night, Laverne and Amara sat on their small mattress in the maid's quarters. The air was heavy with silence. "Mama," Amara whispered, "did I do something wrong?" Laverne pulled her close. "No, baby. You did something so right, it scared powerful people." Amara blinked up at her. "I just want to play." "I know," Laverne said, brushing her daughter's hair back. "But sometimes when you shine too bright in the wrong room, people try to own your light." Outside their door, footsteps paused. Someone had been listening. And in the dark, Mr. Whitmore stood alone in the hallway, staring at the closed door, mind racing. He wasn't finished, not by a long shot. The next morning, the piano was moved, not to the concert room, not to the grand parlor. It was brought outside, onto the marble patio overlooking the gardens, and set up like a stage. Chairs were arranged, crisp linens laid, and servers prepped trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. By noon, the estate was buzzing with guests. Important ones. Wealthy. Powerful. All of them handpicked by Mr. Whitmore. Laverne and Amara stood near the kitchen entrance, watching the crowd form. She hadn't given permission for Amara to play, but she wasn't asked either. When Mr. Whitmore appeared, dressed in his finest tailored suit, he didn't speak to them. He simply nodded toward the piano. "She's not a showpiece," Laverne said under her breath. He ignored her. A woman in a silver dress approached. "Is this the child you told us about?" Mr. Whitmore smiled. "Yes, the prodigy. You're in for something special." He turned to Amara. "Play the piece from the other night." Amara looked to her mother, unsure. Laverne nodded slowly, reluctantly. She stepped forward. The moment her fingers hit the keys, the world shrank. Notes spilled into the warm afternoon air like magic. Conversations hushed. Heads turned. Even the birds seemed to pause. She played with everything inside her: fear, hope, confusion. And when she finished, the applause roared. People stood. Some even wiped tears. Mr. Whitmore basked in it all. He shook hands, whispered figures to donors, and introduced Amara like she was already his protégée. But something in Amara had shifted. As the clapping faded, she looked out over the crowd and didn't feel joy. She felt watched, owned. Later, as she walked back inside, a woman grabbed her arm gently. "You're something special, sweetheart," she said softly. "Don't let anyone decide your price." The woman slipped her a card. Dr. Renee Marshall, Juilliard Conservatory. Laverne saw it happen from a distance. And in that moment she knew it was time to make a choice. Either they stayed and let someone else write Amara's story, or they ran, before it was too late. That night, while the estate slept beneath its velvet quiet, Laverne packed what little they owned: a few clothes, a worn photo of Amara's late father, and the business card tucked into her daughter's sock. Amara sat on the edge of the bed, confused but silent. She could feel it in the air. Something big was about to change. "Mama," she whispered, "are we leaving?" Laverne knelt before her. "Baby, you're a star. But some people want to put stars in cages. We're not letting that happen." "What about the music school? The piano?" Laverne took her hand. "You'll have both, just not his way. Not under someone who thinks your talent makes him your owner." They crept through the service hallways, past the kitchen, out the back entrance where Laverne had spent 15 years entering unnoticed. Now, she was leaving it for good. But as they reached the end of the gravel path, a voice cut through the dark. "Going somewhere?" Mr. Whitmore stepped out from the shadows, robe draped, a drink in his hand like always. Laverne stepped in front of Amara. "You can't stop us." He laughed once, cold. "You're not thinking clearly. This is bigger than you. You think Juilliard would just let her in off a business card." "She doesn't need your permission," Laverne snapped. He stepped forward. "I made her. I brought her into that world. She was scrubbing floors a week ago." "No," Laverne said firmly. "You didn't make her. You just happened to be standing there when the world realized she's already extraordinary." For a long second, no one moved. Then Amara stepped out from behind her mother and looked him dead in the eye. "You wanted me to play for fun. But for me, it's never just fun. It's everything." Without another word, they turned and walked into the night. It wasn't easy. There were shelters. Cold nights. Doubt. But the card led to a phone call. The call led to an audition. And the audition? It led to everything. Years later, Amara stood on a stage at Carnegie Hall. Her fingers danced on ivory, her music echoing through generations. And somewhere in the back row, a woman wiped a tear, because her daughter had finally played her own song, free.